let us give the floor to our next speaker this morning. It is Dr. Renato Berrón, who's Director General of the Mexico City Institute for Construction Safety. Doctor, thank you. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Luciano. Thank you for inviting me. And I want to thank Dr. Sergio Alcocer and the Education Ministry. Thank you for inviting me, giving me this opportunity to talk to you about this Mexico City Institute for Safety in all the constructions. And this has to do with structural safety and security of private public buildings, education buildings, that is. I imagine you can now see what I'm showing on the screen, right? Yes, we can. Thank you. Okay, let's start with this presentation. And I know I have 30 minutes, so let me try to take advantage of those 30 minutes as much as I can. Very well. Before I talk to you about the program in Mexico City, let me tell you that in Mexico City, we have 5,561 education, basic education schools, kindergarten, elementary, and junior high school. We don't have high school or higher education. We just have the middle school and basic levels of education. We believe that for each school, there's about 4 buildings, more or less 4 buildings. Some have 6 buildings, 8 buildings. There are schools that have 6 or 8 buildings. Others only have 3 or 2 buildings. So there's a total of 22,000 schools. The idea we have in Mexico City is to check each and every one of those schools, to check them through a mathematical school, through the use of computers, so that we can see how much they are complying or not complying with the regulations. Excuse me, doctor. Could you put it in the presentation mode so that you can see the tables better, please? Thank you. Yes.
Ahí la estamos viendo muy bien, doctor. Muchas gracias.
That's better. Thank you, doctor.
Okay.
Entonces, very well. So then, specialists who are doing those numerical reviews or checkups are responsible for structural responsibility, or they're in charge of construction works. They are the people that are supporting the government for those inspections. And this is 99 of them with the special license to do this, and other inspectors, 682 other inspectors that are helping the structural engineers. And if 40% of them are participating in this program, which is quite ambitious, we're talking about 22,000 buildings that have to be inspected, So we have 312 people that are going to be available doing this, to do this, yes. So we thought, well, given such a high number of school buildings versus such a small number of specialists that are going to be doing the inspection for this program, then we have to prioritize. So we are dividing the buildings into high, medium, high priorities according to the construction and the geotechnical area they're located. So to manage numbers better, let me tell you that all those buildings or schools that were built before 1985 that are, we have 7,723 schools or buildings rather. We're talking about school buildings. And then after 1985, in the high areas, we have 3,999. So with these numbers, we can now manage and thus have more feasibility for this program through the groups that I've mentioned. Now, in 2019, mid-2019, a reform was published. This reform is on construction norms and standards, Article 177. And they make this inspection mandatory, compulsory, under certain characteristics, or because that's what's being demanded by the Mexico City administration. So after an earthquake, we have three cases. When we have an earthquake with this type of motion or movement, if we have movements between 30 and 60 gal in that station, then we are going to have inspections in schools reporting damage. However, if in that station we have 61 to 90 gals in terms of the shaking of the region, then all the schools are going to be inspected. All those schools in this priority shaking process. And those are the schools with the biggest amount of damage from 1957 through 2017, when we had the last serious earthquake. Now, if the earthquake has a shaking of over 90 gal, then all the schools in that area, or all the schools in Mexico City rather, will have to be inspected and checked. So this Article 177 is very important because we do have to have this inspection on the structural situation according to the guidelines, of course. For that purpose, then, we published guidelines September 18th, and they were just reformed February 3 of this year. And the original guidelines, September 18th, 2019, and February 3rd of this year, spoke about a method to prioritize the facilities. Now we have a simplified method. It's a faster method because the physical survey method, it was very slow and had many problems. However, here I'm showing you the stages of the inspection so that finally the last stage is for us to have the structural condition inspection, determining the deadlines for priority actions. There are three priority actions: numerical inspection, retrofitting project, and the execution of the retrofitting project. Those are the priorities. However, before that, we are thinking how long we should give the owner of the building. This is for private schools. I will go into public schools later on. It's a different treatment altogether, but for private schools, we have a first stage that is defining deadlines and timeline for the owners of those buildings for them to do the necessary actions, the numerical inspection, the retrofitting project, and the execution or the implementation of the retrofitting project. And then after that, the certification process, stage one. That's when the owner of the school may pick one of those two methods. Nothing is imposed on them. They can pick one of the two methods. They can use the simplified method, for instance, to determine timeline. And this is a very practical method based on the geotechnical zone and the year on which the building was made, the school that is, then those deadlines or the timeline is established. We see damage construction, and the geotechnical times. For the numerical inspection, we give the owner of the school 6 months for results after the numerical inspection.
Now, for the refitting process, we provide 12 months after the notification. And to execute the refitting process, we provide 24 more months. When we're talking about a building that is located in Zone 3, built before 85. For buildings built after 85, located in Zone 1 or 2, they have a longer period to fulfill or comply these priority actions. At the end of the day, we calculate the timelines and we notify the owner, and after that notification, the deadline starts. The other method, the physical survey to determine the deadlines for priority actions, that is a more complex process because we first need to carry out the physical survey based on a format within the regulation. Several pieces of paper where we gather a lot of information about the structuring, the damages, the location of the building, and some background, whether it was reinforced or not. The owner then has to locate and hire the services of a specialist. And even with this process, we have had a lot of problems with the filling of these forms. The physical survey is recorded electronically at the institute, and once it's signed, the institute has it, and all the data is then analyzed: structural damage, location, structuring, age, everything. And in the end, through a notification, we notify the owner of the deadlines. Now, we also have a chart that defines the timetable based on the geotechnical zone, the age of the building, etc., where times are longer for buildings sometimes. So if the owner chooses this method, they will have more time to do these priority actions. After this, in the second stage, the numeric review by part of a specialist is where we have either a correspondent or a DRO. Once we have defined the timetable and the deadlines, the owner hires this correspondent, There's field work if they don't have original blueprints, but most buildings, because most buildings in Mexico City don't have their original blueprints, and they will have to do a geometrical survey of the building, the topographical survey for vibrations and lab tests, scans, and of course the geotechnical study. And after that, we have the desktop work where we analyze the mathematical model of the existing structure to review the structural elements, verifying whether they comply or not with the current regulation. And if they are non-compliant, we will have to do a rehabilitation or refitting project. And of course, we notify the activity at each step. If the structure complies with the regulation, then they can directly get the certification for that building at the government's office. If not, they have to do a refitting project. The refitting project would be the third stage. There are deadlines to do this for the owner. We do the mathematical model of the refitted structure. We verify that it complies with the regulation. Everything related to a guide that you can find in the Institute's website. We record the refitting process of this building at our institute that has to be approved by the correspondent. And the fourth stage is the execution of the project to refit the building under the supervision of a co-responsible party. And then the fifth stage is the recording of the certification of structural safety when the building complies with the current rules and regulations. Well, we have a flow chart of all these actions, which we did in case anyone wants to have it. I will give this presentation to the organizers, and you can read all this so you can check this more efficiently. We have the notification of the educational authority. It says that the owner needs to choose a co-responsible party. We get the location based on the legal address. We set the timetable for the priority actions. The owner notifies the authority of the numerical review, the first priority action, and it can either go to the refitting project or to the certification. If it indeed goes to the refitting project, then we get to the modeling, the refitting process, and the certification of structural safety. So this is in broad strokes what I told you about what refers to private schools. Now, for public schools, it is the responsibility of the authority to put them up to date and to get that certification for structural safety. To do that, a review has to be carried out. We have carried out already, we have kick-started this review. We do the mathematical model, how much is compliant or not, and based on the seismic danger, The second stage, of course, comprises the priority actions, the review, the refitting process, the execution of the project, and the certification. This is the chart defining seismic danger. We believe that Cuauhtémoc, Benito Juárez, Iztapalapa, and Tlalpan are the boroughs that are the priority, then Tláhuac, Coyoacán, Xochimilco, and Iztacalco. And as you can see, the ones in blue and the rest are the least priority ones. And with this, we are tackling all the public schools in Mexico City. Here we have the flow chart. We have the support here of the Civil Engineer Association of Mexico. And we first need to do the numerical modeling and the refitting process. Now, we did the review. If they are not compliant, we go to the refitting process. We use the technical guide. And the project refers to the institute. The government intervenes in the school, and in this year we're going to do a lot of intervening actually, and we obtain the registration certification. And of course 172 schools have these refitting. So we have 625 projects to execute. This year, we're going to execute not all of them. It's going to be a big number because of a money issue. We analyze how much it would cost to do the 625 projects. And we're talking about 1.5 billion pesos. So it's a money issue that is stopping us. And we're going to start with around 200 million pesos, more or less, in all these schools. And as the time moves forward, we will have more resources to execute these refitting projects. In the Cuauhtémoc borough, we have 154, in Iztapalapa 171, in Xochimilco 91, and in Tláhuac borough, we have 80 schools. These are school buildings. And in the end, we're talking about 625 projects. Obviously, we are working with prestigious firms who must have a structural safety specialist, and these are the many DROs or co-responsible parties that are helping us, around 38 specialists who carried out this task. You can see the firms, and you can see the projects that they assisted on. So it's a teamwork. It's a teamwork between the government and civil society, and we will hope to have more resources. With this, I am going to finish my presentation and I'm available for questions. Thank you very much. There are many questions. We will not have time to read all of them, but one that I think is a general Question is, which schools are you choosing to review? Only the ones that had damages or no? And after what magnitude or intensity measurement will you have to update your structural safety certificates?
Bueno, aquí es, empiezo con esta última pregunta que se me hace muy importante.
I'm going to start with this last question because I think it's important. We first of all update the structural safety certificate, and it wasn't like before, where the corresponsible party does a quick visit to the building and signs the certificate. No, that took us to having a lot of omissions that could, in the case of a high intensity earthquake, could create a collapse, because at the naked eye, we can't really specify if the building is going to be compliant or not. So it's no longer just a piece of paper, it's a whole process now. This is the change of mindset that we want to have. Now, when do you need to update it? Every 5 years, or whenever there is an earthquake of an important size, as it was stated before. We're not talking about magnitude or intensity any longer. We're talking about acceleration, because acceleration is a very precise measurement. When we are talking about high acceleration, we're going to have high damage. If we're talking about high magnitude or high intensity, maybe the intensity is too far away, the magnitude is too far away. And in Mexico City, people need to understand that it was 1 week before September 19th, 2017. Why people don't understand why, if the earthquake was bigger, there were more damages in the second one. So it's not a parameter that allows us to precisely define when we're going to have damages. We must talk about acceleration. That's what I invite people to do, to discuss acceleration, because it's a very precise measurement that points to when we're going to have damages. And the article defines when you need to update your certificate. If the earthquake is from 30 to 70, we're talking about a small group of schools. But if it's higher than 90, then it's all of them. And then we will have to update the certificates of all the schools in Mexico City. We have 1 minute and a half for one more question. If there is a school that is non-compliant with the current regulation and has not suffered any damages, do they need to belong to this scheme? Yes, of course. Out of the 625 projects, buildings, most of them has no damages, but they are not compliant with the regulation because of a lot of things. And that's when they need to update the certificates. Damages don't tell us much. I'm going to finish with this. If we had gone to one of these buildings that collapsed on September 18th, or September 18th, we would have bought an apartment because they were new, they were freshly painted, but they collapsed the next day. So structural inspections with the naked eye are very limited. What really gives us information is the numerical inspection. Thank you very much, Doctor. Those were the two main questions. There are many other questions that, if you can stay with us in the round table, you can help us answer. Thank you very much for your participation once again, and we'll see you later.